Another day, another dollar. So, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a property that has been around since the mid-2000s. Its uniqueness in style and relatability for young adults made it enjoyable and almost timeless, even in 2024. The impact it had cannot be understated. It feels like every decade since its release, it's come back in a new form. Be it a movie in 2010, a game around the same time, or an anime in 2023, and then a re-release of the game in 2023 as well. None of this would have been possible if it wasn't for the comics back in 2004. Having watched the movie and the show first, I enjoyed my time with both of them, so much so that I considered picking up the comics and the game. My foundation on the prospect was shaky though because I had already consumed two versions of the property, so naively I thought that I already knew what I needed to know. I was horrendously wrong. There is so much cut content from the comics that didn't make the movie that I had to make a video on it. So let me give you all my thoughts on the original Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So let me explain the plot for those who don't know. Scott Pilgrim, our main character, has to defeat Ramona Flowers' 7 evil exes to be able to date her. That's it. Well, of course, that's me being reductive. That is all you really need to know for each version of the story. But if you watch the movie first like I did, it'll seem like that's how this comic is going to go because they start out almost identical. But that's not the case here. I'll be referring to the comics as the original timeline going forward for the sake of clarity, so keep that in mind when I mention it. What sets apart the original timeline from the movie is simple. The comics tell the full story. Of course, the movie can only do so much in its allotted time, that's why I give it some leeway, but I didn't realize just how much was actually changed. My perception of the series was shaped by the movie, but the movie itself has full-on characters missing, story arcs change, and boyfriend fights completely retconned. The original timeline and the movies stay aligned up until the Todd and Envy fight. Everything before that is mostly consistent, but once that arc really starts, the movie changes significantly. Like for instance, the fourth comic is completely retconned in the movie because Lisa and Knives' dad don't play as big of a role as they do in the comics, so they changed the Roxy fight entirely in the movie. The two versions realign when Gideon shows up, but the movie diverges again when the fight starts. With all that being said, I want to specify, I think the movie's fine. I rewatched it recently and I had a fun time. But with the context from the comic now added, I consider the original timeline to be vastly better. But with that being said, when I first started reading the comics, I didn't feel much. Like I said, they were pretty consistent with what I knew from the movie, so I was enjoying myself, but it wasn't anything I hadn't seen before. That is until the third volume kicks in, with Todd and Envy showing up and their fight being different. Not completely different, but there was extra lore and scenes I hadn't seen before. That was enough to pique my interest, and it would only be strengthened when volume 4 started. The Roxy fight in it is completely different to where she isn't even the focus of the volume. It's about Scott, Lisa, Ramona, and Knives' dad. By this point, I was completely locked in. The differences were more substantial and in my opinion better than what I knew from the movie. The fifth volume was the biggest example because the Karayanagi twins played a significantly bigger role compared to the movie. The sixth volume has similarities with the movie but handles Gideon and the ending differently. And so some of my takeaways after finishing it were: Number 1, Scott Pilgrim kinda sucks, and that's okay. The movie kept his character consistent, but the comics show us way more of him. We see in volumes 3 through 6, his history involving past relationships, his trauma, and see that Scott Pilgrim isn't really the greatest person. I like this a lot because it gives him depth and a character arc to go through. Fighting the exes won't solve his internal struggle, fighting his demons however will. It's more substantial here compared to the movie because the comics have more time to flesh it out, thanks to the medium it's presented in. The comics also show how significant people like Envy Adams, Kim, Lisa, and others were to Scott's life and how they influenced him. The added backstory and development helped build up Scott to be a nuanced and interesting character, which makes me want to root for him by the end of it because he makes up with the people he's wronged and grows as a person by the end of the story. Which leads me to number 2, Scott and Ramona's relationship. So the admit of being in a comic allows the relationship to be fleshed out more. This makes the relationship fun to watch because both of them are trying to change. Scott has his baggage, but so does Ramona. While Scott Pilgrim Takes Off depicts Ramona the best, the original timeline isn't bad in comparison. Just like Scott, she had to grow for them to be able to continue to date. This makes the two's relationship in the comics enjoyable and surprisingly deep compared to what I expected. The movie loses this nuance unfortunately by not having Ramona grow much at all. She's used more as a goal than she really is an actual character. The comics, in my opinion, do a good job making Scott and Ramona's relationship by the end of it feel earned. But all that pales in comparison to my third reason, Kim Pines. Throughout my life, There are certain characters in media that I fall in love with, whether it be because of their backstory, their design, their gameplay, etc. I like a series if I love a character from it. Examples are Ana from Overwatch, Jill from Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartending Action, Marie from Skullgirls, and now Kim Pines from the comics. I love Kim. Wholeheartedly, she is my favorite character in the entire series now. In the movie, she's delegated to a side character role, which is unfortunate because she doesn't get a character arc in it. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off shows her play a bigger role by helping out Ramona in finding Scott, but the comics depict her the best in my opinion. At the start, Kim hates everything. She hates Scott, she hates her roommates, and her life. But as the story progresses, we see more to her. She becomes friends with Ramona, she moves in with some friends, and even becomes nicer. However, her new roommates suck, her boyfriend cheated on her with said roommate, and she had to move back to Montreal to live with her parents. And I remember asking myself at this point, what is Brian O'Malley cooking with Kim? As far as I know, she has every right to say that her life sucks. So when Scott was in a depressive episode, I didn't expect Kim to be the one to help him the most. But she does, because she loves him platonically. She views him as a dear friend and helps him at his lowest, even if it's to her detriment. Whether it be when the Kadianagi twins kidnapped her, when Scott and Ramona were dating, or when they broke up, she was there for the both of them. And I love that. The way she's written immediately flipped me from neutral to a fan. I'm literally Kim-pilled right now. There's other characters like Knives, Envy, and Wallace I want to talk about, but I'll save that for people in the comments and any remarks I have in editing. But before I go, I do want to mention some minor gripes I had with the comics. These were published in the mid-2000s to early 2010s, so the language can be insensitive at times. So I pose that as a warning if you're interested in reading these, that the R slur is mentioned a lot. The art as well can be rough during the start, but as the story progresses through the volumes, Brian O'Malley grows into his own style and solidifies the designs to the point where the end of the series art has its own identity. So for my rating, I give the comics an 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed them as the volumes progressed, with volumes 3 through 6 going on a generational run. I recommend this to anyone who hasn't read it or has seen the show or movie but not read the comics. The art is great, the writing is great, the characters are lovable and relatable, the fights are okay, the humor is good. There's a lot to love about Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. But with that being said, let me know what you all think about this down below. Do you like the comics more than the show or the movie? Which one do you like the most? Who's your favorite character? You know, stuff like that. At some point, I do plan on playing the game because I just bought it off of Steam for $5, so I'll play that on stream at some point. But with that being said, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed. Hopefully be able to get this out before December ends, but I don't know when I'm going to do that. But with that being said, I'll see you all in the next video. This has been Infamous Isaac, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Bro, that shit was what? Oh, yo, what the hell is this thing, bro?